You are listening to the Ready PDM Network.
Today's episode was brought to you by Eigenworks. Most companies don't know why they lose deals, and few know why they win. Eigenworks can tell you why. With the buyer as hero approach, Eigenworks gets deep insight into the reasons organizations make buying decisions. The product, promotion, and sales insights provide Eigenworks clients with a significant competitive position in their marketplaces.
Are you ready?
So world-class entrepreneurs are never lucky. Never. You make your own luck.
Lean startup methodology and the idea of how to, develop something very quickly, test things, improve upon it, iterate.
Do things because of this ridiculous self-confidence. If you don't have self-confidence to know that you can pull it out, you're dead.
We had tried to focus on delivering a feature set that was, kind of a compromise between what we wanted to deliver and what they wanted to deliver, and it ended up not being that effective for use. So we put it out, we rolled it out. Technology worked fine. It was scoped, what we delivered, what we promised we would, but the business didn't use it as we expected.
Of all the things that can happen to you as an entrepreneur, the one thing you can control is effort.
The biggest thing that I think you have to be aware of as an entrepreneur is this idea of cognitive dissonance. The idea that you can believe that your startup or your abilities are at a certain level. You could believe that your idea is fantastic and that everybody should like it. But you have to, at some point, reconcile that with reality.
Entrepreneurs have the opportunity to match their passions and their strengths with some unmet need in society. And the classic entrepreneur is somebody who is able to identify where there's a need that hasn't been met and rush in there and try to provide it.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Are you ready?
Hello, Ready Product Radio heads, and welcome to another exciting episode of Ready Product Radio. This week, we kick off what I hope will be a quarterly hangout where we check in with entrepreneur and good friend Eli Alston to get an appreciation of the entrepreneur's journey through the different phases from MVP to customer development and growth, and maybe even some stumbling blocks along the way. Eli is currently founder and president of Storehome.co, which he will explain in this episode, along with giving us our first checkpoint on where he is currently in his customer and product journey. Ready Product Principle number 23 is, the entrepreneur, the founder, is the first hero in the product journey. If you want to create breakthrough products, even in an existing large enterprise, you need to think and act like an entrepreneur. Enjoy the show. Okay, Eli Alston, welcome to Ready Product Radio. Ready Product Radio is a weekly podcast helping product people of all disciplines through the many challenges they faced on their product management journeys. Want to welcome you and thank you for taking the time. Eli, perhaps we can start out. You and I are good friends, but for the benefit of the rest of our listeners, maybe you can give yourself a quick introduction of yourself and what you're focused on these days.
Absolutely, and great to see you again, Alan. Really nice. Thanks so much for having me on this podcast. I'm very excited.
Good.
Well, as you mentioned, we've known each other for quite a few years here now, and I'm working on a new startup in the retail space called Storehome. And that startup allows retailers to be able to use video conferencing to communicate with their consumers who might be at home. Okay. So it's a really neat new startup, and I'm sure we can talk a little bit about it later on. But
Sure.
other than that, it's mostly been startup life for me, Alan.
Yeah, for sure. And just before we get into to a little more detail into what you're doing, can you give us an idea for our listeners of your background? Are you a techie, a coder, a business guy? You a high school dropout or a PhD or?
Kind of in between all of those things. I've I have got a bachelor's of business administration as an education, so nothing terribly exciting there. I would classify myself as a amateur coder. I did code at the beginning of my career out of university for just a couple of years, mostly self-taught through Google. So, unfortunately, that can only take you so far. Really enjoyed that, but my passion migrated into product management and new product development. I spent about 8 years in various product management roles at a couple different companies, and and then in between different stints at certain companies, I've probably played around in about 3 or 4 different startups that haven't gone very far, but every time I'm getting a little bit better at it, so it's pretty exciting right now.
Good, good. So what we're planning to do, and what I've been talking to Eli about for our audience, is something a little new for Ready Product Radio. What we thought we'd do is check in with Eli on a quarterly basis and catch up on where he's at with his business development goals and with his startups and whatnot. So we're going to focus for this first discussion just on meeting Eli and understanding his background, talk about why he decided to become an entrepreneur, talk about the most difficult thing about starting starting your own business. And thirdly, we'll talk about whether Eli's following any specific process or method to his madness, or is he just making it up as he goes along. So does that sound pretty good, Eli? Is a good first intro?
Yeah, fantastic.
Excellent. So let's start with the first one. So you've talked a bit about your background already. So talk about the decision to get off the corporate ladder, so to speak, and become an entrepreneur. What was it that kind of brought you to that decision?
Like most things, I think in life, it's a bit of a gradual decision-making process. I think I started trying to do my first startup in university, where I was working with a friend who was a software developer, and we made the decision at that time to put away the business plan as it was back then and focus more on getting through school. So that was my first kind of inkling in that, and ever since that, I've wanted to branch out on my own and be the master of my own destiny, per se. So I think however the straw that broke the camel's back was after a few years in the corporate world. I realized that a lot of what I wanted to accomplish in my personal life and my career, and also the exciting challenges of business, were being roadblocked by certain elements of just the natural corporate structure. A lot of bureaucracy, too many meetings, and really I wanted to get to where the rubber meets the road in business. And that's when I finally said at some point, I think it was about 3 years ago, I'm going to resign from my job and I'm going to fully commit myself to, no matter what, trying to launch a successful business myself.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And I imagine that's an emotional decision as well as a business one, and one kind of fraught with some anxiety, but it seems like you're fully committed to it. So, you've been at it now, you say, for 3 years. So let's go on to our next topic then and talk about what's been the most difficult part for you now 3 years in. What would you say is the biggest challenge for our listeners that may be thinking about doing the same thing, taking the same path? What would you say has been the most difficult part of that process?
Of course, everyone's going to have their own challenges, and certainly it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it successfully, mind you. There's lots of people that try, but successfully doing it is a real challenge. For myself personally, I see the challenges that I've been facing and still face broadly broken up into 2 different groups. One being traditional, more business challenges, where it's challenge of having enough knowledge, having the right connections, having the right network, doing the right things from a business perspective. Generally, I find those challenges are fairly easy to overcome, especially with the availability of information on the internet. Great tools such as meetups and other types of things. In the Toronto area, meetups is quite an active community for people trying to get together and network in unofficial sort of meetings. That sort of stuff, I feel you can logic your way through that. You can work your way through. You just about focusing yourself and trying to find the right answer. The other challenge, the other bucket of challenges, I would say, are more psychological, personal challenges. And those challenges, I think, are things that the entrepreneurial community and the may understand implicitly, but the community outside of entrepreneurs don't really understand at all. And this is something that I believe it's a bit of a faux pas for a lot of people to talk about, because everybody, when they look back at how great their startup careers were, it's a lot more fun to talk about how great things were and how successful things were, and it's a lot more difficult to open up the books to your own, private challenges with what's happening. And there are some great guys who are doing this, but it's not as open as I would like it to be. So for me, there's a lot of psychological challenges with it. Simple things to start off with. The biggest thing that I think you have to be aware of as an entrepreneur is this idea of cognitive dissonance. The idea that you can believe that your startup or your abilities are at a certain level. You could believe that your idea is fantastic and that everybody should like it. But you have to, at some point, reconcile that with reality. And this is the first, I think, hurdle that entrepreneurs who haven't been indoctrinated with this will have to overcome. They'll have to really take that kind of reality pill at some point and come to and be able to look at life through that reality and be able to open themselves up to the facts as they present themselves. Once you can start to understand this idea of cognitive dissonance and this idea that you as your psychology is going to want you to try and ignore those difficult conversations and those difficult facts. Once you can start to try and sit down and work your way through them, then you can start doing the hard work of making sure that you're working on your own personal weaknesses. For example, if you're anxious about going out and cold calling people, or anxious about meeting new contacts at networking, you have to come to some sort of conclusion in your own mind that these things have to be done, and you have to make yourself do them in some way. Now, I'm not saying that every person is going to be the best in every area, but there are certain things as a startup entrepreneur that you just can't avoid. Sales is absolutely one of those things. Whether if you're doing direct sales or if you're selling a web or mobile product online through marketing and other types of things, there's a heck of a lot of selling you need to do. So if you're not great at that, and if you're scared of that, you better start learning how to get better at it quick.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So next, let's roll in and talk a little bit about the process. But before we do that, just to set the context, if we can, so you said you've been at this for 3 years. Before we talk about what your current focus is, can you talk a little bit about how many different startups you've tried to create at this point? Like what attempt are you on now? Is this the third or fourth company that you've?
This is the fourth
product, or fourth? Okay.
The first startup I worked on was a classic failure in a lot of senses. We spent a lot of money developing. It was a product that required some hardware development and software development. We spent a lot of money making what we thought was going to be a great product, assuming we understood the market. Of course, you can always come to the market and assume you know certain facts about it, but when you start actually going out investigating, you end up learning that there are attributes that you never even thought mattered that really matter, and so forth. Stuff that you couldn't even guess. So all the more reason to make sure to spend a lot of time in the marketplace before you even start developing a product, understanding the industry, the players, the customers, and those types of things. So that was kind of a classic failure. We spent a year and a half developing, what we thought was a great product. Took it, we quote unquote launched it, and launched it with very little fanfare and very little interest. And then we had to have a serious decision about what was our personal financial runways on this project. So at that point, we decided to part from the project. I went back to the corporate world for a couple of years, and then I ended up back doing this, starting my more purposeful and journey into entrepreneurship, where I'm not giving up on this time. So.
So that was your first one, and then you're saying now you're on the fourth. So there's been a two and a three in there somewhere as well. Have I got that correct?
Correct. Yeah. The
Okay.
second one was a partnership with a gentleman who already had some customers working in the web CMS space,
Hmm.
content management system space, and we started there, and that was a really interesting, or I thought was a really interesting idea, and it ended up we talked about it quite a bit. We worked on it a bit, and we couldn't find the market potential that I was interested in.
Hmm.
And from that, I transitioned into another product that was used in the events and meetings industry.
Hmm.
And that product actually was born out of the client base from the previous partnership. And I had some success on that. This one, however, I was doing it on my own. And that's another lesson for entrepreneurs is that developing technology products on your own as a solo entrepreneur is very, very, very difficult.
Hmm.
Even if you are brilliant in both engineering and sales,
Hmm.
um, if we could divide the company up into just those two um, simple areas, the amount of hours you have, the number of hours you have in a day is always your bottleneck, and how much
Hmm.
energy you have is always your bottleneck. So it's very difficult to run a business that way. I was able to get half a dozen early customers, generate a little bit of revenue. However, it fell apart a little bit when some competition in the space ended up squeezing my potential for that product, and the market just it didn't dry up necessarily, but it was going to dry up. So that was number three. Number four now is the store home project, which I've tried to compile all the past learnings of my
Yeah,
life and
exactly.
everything I can read, and at least tried to do all the things I did poorly in the last endeavors. Tried to do them right this time.
Hmm. So before we talk about what that one is, because I imagine we're going to spend a little bit more time on that one. So would you change anything? Like looking back, do you think those three, I'm not going to call them failures, let's just call them those three experiences, those three educations, right? They say there's no failure, there's just education. Do you think that that's been a necessary path, or do you think there's some book you could have read that could have saved you from having to go through those three experiences?
Interestingly, I was reading and still do read quite a bit,
Hmm.
and I don't think that there. It's a very interesting question, Alan, because
Hmm.
hindsight is obviously it creates a bit of clarity for
Hmm.
something that occurred in the past, where in that time it certainly wasn't clear at all. It was murky, it was cloudy, and you're doing the best you could. Um, I do believe that entrepreneurship is a skill,
Hmm.
and that's something that gets glossed over quite a bit.
Hmm.
To be a good entrepreneur is like akin to being a good accountant,
Hmm.
in the sense that there is stuff you need to learn, there's theory, there is practice that you need to become good at. You need to understand how the business works, how you make money, how you service your clients, as well as all the ins and outs of accounting. And you have to keep up with all the different changes in rules and regulations. Nobody expects somebody to become an accountant overnight.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of people that walk into entrepreneurship think that they should be able to become an entrepreneur
Hmm.
overnight because
Hmm.
they associate an idea or a concept with becoming an entrepreneur, not the all of the things you have to do to take that concept, fulfill it through execution to bring that thing to reality.
Hmm.
So it's a skill. So could I have learned it differently? Yeah, I sure wish I would have had, more opportunity. I wish I had, for example, a family that was entrepreneurial minded already that could teach me a bunch of this stuff. Some
Hmm.
basic entrepreneurial and business skills right from the get go. That would have been fantastic.
Hmm.
Um, Also, so there's some really great resources. Entrepreneurship, at least technology entrepreneurship, has started to become codified. There's
Right.
a lot of really great people, especially out of Silicon Valley, who
Hmm.
have now literally decades of experience with technology entrepreneurship from the 70s and 80s
Hmm.
onwards, who have started to put together some fundamentals of technology entrepreneurship. And I recommend to people who are looking to get into this space to that is your starting theory. Start there. Look for some of the codified examples of how to be a great entrepreneur. There's a lot now. Start there, and then you hopefully will be able to at least perhaps limit the severity of your trials and tribulations.
Okay.
Right?
So can we talk a little bit about what some of those models are?
Absolutely.
I know I've heard you talk a lot about Steve Blank in the past. I know there's things like Lean Startup Canvas and all of the, things like that. So what are some of the ones that you recommend that you think work well for you?
Number one is a good entrepreneur always starts with understanding the customer and the market. So you want to start with a framework that focuses on that initially, because you need something under the foundation of your business needs to be around, the customer that you're going to be, the problem you're going to be solving and the customer that's going to be buying this product from you. So
Right.
I think you mentioned it, Steve Blank's customer development model is fantastic. He's codified that, to use that word again, with Bob Dorff. They co-wrote a book called The Startup Owner's Manual, which is, as far as I can tell, kind of the best Bible for startup technology entrepreneurs right now, on how to basically go from nothing to a scaled up business. And it's got everything in there. It's a reference manual. It's your how-to book. So it's full of not only templates for how to do stuff and lists of things you have to look at, but it's also full of Bob Dorff and Steve Blank. And if you don't know who they are, go look them up. They're famous in the Silicon Valley. It's full of their knowledge and wisdom too, and they've managed to all that information they managed to put into a very accessible form. So I recommend that.
Okay.
From the engineering side of stuff, definitely understand the lean startup methodology. Eric Ries's lean startup methodology, and the idea of how to, develop something very quickly, test things, improve upon it, iterate. It goes hand in hand with the customer development model. And it's very important from an engineering perspective to stop you from making mistakes such as, developing a product without ever taking it to market, without ever testing it, experimenting with the ideas and the concepts before releasing it to market, I should say. So that's customer and selling. That's engineering. And then I would also say you have to understand personal productivity nowadays. It's one of the other things that entrepreneurs, I don't think new entrepreneurs don't realize is how much discipline and discipline it requires to be your own boss and push yourself through these really difficult times. So you need to also beef up your ability to be productive in times when you don't want to be productive, to make sure that you have good habits so that you're healthy and your success can be possible. So there's lots of great personal productivity people out there. One of the ones I really like is Darren Hardy. He's the founder of Success Magazine, kind of a motivational speaker. Although I'm sure he doesn't use that term. He's got a great book called Compound Effect, which talks a lot about using habits, both short-term and long-term habits, to be the most effective possible in business. So that's that. There's a bunch of other ones too that come to mind. From new market development, Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm is a fundamental. It was funny. I read that book, Alan, when I was in corporate world, and in corporate world, you read that I read it with such a different lens. I recommend if you're going to step out of the corporate side of things, read Crossing the Chasm again, but read it from a startup lens, and you recognize there's some brilliant strategic, market strategy in there that can really help you make the right choices early on in your startup.
Excellent. Yeah, that's some good references. So now, if you don't mind, Eli, let's get into a little bit more specifics about your current business. To the extent that you're comfortable, as I as I said in our pre-work, don't share any secret sauce. We want you to not give away the intellectual property here. But if you could talk to us a little bit about who your target customer is, what the type of product is that you have, and as well maybe how you're structured, whether you've got partners, whether it's largely yourself, and whether you outsource any activities. So can we just talk about your current business and how you approach it?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you.
So Store Home is solving this problem. The problem is that traditional retailers, especially retailers that sell larger type products, more expensive products, complex products such as appliances, furniture, automotive, and so forth,
Right.
they utilize e-commerce relative to commodity products like books and music and other stuff like that. They utilize e-commerce to such a small extent. I think in Canada, for example, appliance and furniture online sales is still in single digits.
Wow.
At least the percentage of online sales compared to traditional in-store sales. Okay? Other countries have different levels of this. U.S. is a bit stronger than Canada in this regard, but still significantly lower than you would expect. Especially, we've had Amazon and we've had other players around for a lot of years now on the internet.
Right.
So the question that I posed to retailers was, why aren't you using e-commerce? And the answer they inevitably came back to me was, well, as a retailer, when we're selling these big goods, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for us to sell a lot of this online. People want to come into the store, they want to touch products, they want to get advice from our product experts in the store, our sales reps, our sales consultants. And it's such a major purchase that it's not something they're going to do just based off of a couple reviews online or a couple pictures. It's a much more complex process. And in fact, GE Capital, the credit side of GE in the States, did a study on this 2 years ago, where they showed that still, of major purchases over, I think it was $800, over 80% of people still completed their purchase in store, even though they might have visited the store upwards of 2 or 3 times beforehand, have visited online sites, at least 2 or 3 of them, had originally Google searched or some other search engine allowed them access to information about the products. Despite all this availability of information, they still completed their purchase in store. So the problem then we're trying to solve with retailers is how can we utilize the benefits of online sales, which is expanded market penetration, geographic area. You're allowed to get into other areas and so forth like that. Also, the cost of sale can be a lot lower. The sales can be quicker. The customer service is great because the consumers feel this need of immediacy being met, right? And of course, consumers don't have to travel to stores and so forth. How can we meet this demand and get these benefits of online shopping and e-commerce without obviously starting a whole new direct business? How can we do it with the traditional retail stores? So we came up with this idea of being able to allow salespeople to be able to have a video chat with an online shopper. So this is live video, and the shopper can talk with the salesperson face to face, and this salesperson is in a real store, and that salesperson can walk around that store and actually show the products live as well. So we've developed a way for the whole video conference to be portable and move about through the showroom. And we believe this combination of being able to allow the product expert, the salesperson, to help qualify and bring the right product options to the consumer, plus the ability to show the products in real time as the consumer wants it, is a real winning combination to kind of get over the challenges that currently exist for buying big products online.
So give us a little bit more tangibles then. So the salesperson that's doing this, they must be some kind of hardware, some kind of camera that they're carrying around. Obviously, you need a fairly good internet connection. So can you walk us through the experience from the salesperson side, or is that the primary user for this, the salesperson?
Yes, yeah. So
Okay.
our target customer are retailers,
Right.
and selling into retailers, and our primary user are salespeople
Okay.
that are going to use this tool. So a
Right.
couple things come very evident there. One, it's got to be super simple to use. Salespeople are very busy, very active. They don't have any tolerance for stuff that's difficult to use. It has to be as easy to use as a telephone, right? Two, it's got to be portable because we have to be able to show the different products around the showroom. It's key to our business model that we're able to utilize the existing showrooms. It doesn't make any economic sense for our customer to build a show suite designed just for video conferencing. That would just make this product astronomically expensive for them. The capital investment would be much too large. So that wouldn't make any sense. So yeah, we've had to do a lot of work to make sure the product's very easy to use from the salesperson's perspective, that it's easy to move around, and that of course the quality is very high, because the consumer experience the video quality has to be as good as possible. There has to be limited interruptions. There has to be limited pixelation and other types of technical artifacts that might occur. So what we've done is we've created we've tried to, as much as possible, because we wanted to do this as quickly and iterate as quickly, try to develop it using off-the-shelf technologies. So we partner with a video provider that does the actual video conferencing under the hood, that does the encoding and decoding necessary to do the proper video, two-way video streaming. We've utilized them. We've utilized iPads initially for the device that's going to be both the video recorder and the interface device for the users. Because now we were into this great time where an iPad or other similar tablets have fantastic video resolution, and they have a processing power that's capable of doing a lot of great stuff with this video, but also being able to stream this over Wi-Fi without any hiccups. So we were able to bring down the cost of the solution an order of magnitude from a commercial kind of video streaming type of rig to something that's much more user friendly. And then we've included components that allow a tripod and other types of photography components that allow this video conferencing rig to be easy to pick up and move and place in other places in the showroom. So we've developed what we think we needed as the kind of the minimum viable product for a retailer, which is kind of an all-in-one kit, a turnkey kit, where they can buy one of these kits that has all the hardware they need, plus the apps to run it. And then we also work, the final bit of the solution, of course, is allowing consumers to be able to connect. So we've developed the ability for a web plugin that can be put onto a retailer's website that allows consumers to be able to start a web video chat with a click of a button. And also we have Android and iOS versions of that we can release basically private label for the retailer, so that they can have their own consumer kind of video conferencing app that works specifically solely for this purpose.
Nice. So two questions then to drill down. One is you're starting a lot of your explanations with we. So is that the royal we, which means it's you, but you're used to making it sound bigger, or is there actually really a we to we?
You remember, Alan, one of the mistakes I made in my last business was doing it all myself.
One of the learnings, you mean? One of the learnings I achieved was recognizing that being a solo entrepreneur is very difficult. So the first thing I did when I had this idea, I did two things. One, I made sure that I got this idea and partnered with somebody from industry right away, so that I had somebody who understood the retail industry better than I ever could, because that's not my forte. So to make sure that we were doing something that had real value, I partnered, and I'm using that loosely, but we found basically an early lead customer that was interested in participating in the kind of development of this product. And then I immediately went out and started building up a network, trying to find a co-founder. And finding a co-founder is challenging.
for a lot of reasons. I've had two partners in the past, and they both had they were great, smart people, but it ended up not. It's really difficult to find somebody who can withstand all of the trials and tribulations that you're going to go through, and that is able to that both of you are in the same sort of cycle in life, that you can go through this experience together. So it's a lot like dating for a relationship, where you've got to talk to a lot of people, you've got to figure out who they are, you got to date them a little bit, you got to try it out, and a lot of them aren't going to work. I was lucky enough to find a business partner that was both had complementary skills to me. He's doing the technology side of the business, so I leave all the development and the architecture and all that great stuff to him. But he also has a interest in business, which I think is really important for a technology co-founder. In that, in a startup, everybody's got to understand the core business that you're in and why you're doing it, because you don't have time to write specs. You don't have time to have meetings where you can communicate all this or train all people, and it's happening all so quickly. Everybody needs to have a fundamental understanding of how business operates to be effective. So he's great for that, and also he is same sort of moral compass that I do, same sort of work ethic that I do, and for me, I found this was a nice added benefit. He was in a similar sort of life stage as I was, so we could operate in similar sort of rhythms. So that's definitely a co-founder. I absolutely suggest, but don't underestimate the challenge of doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously the stereotype that comes to mind, at least for old guys like me, is Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. And we can see how kind of different those guys were, and Hewlett and Packard might be a better example. Again, that's even older, but I know what you're saying. It seems to be really hard. So now let's switch to the other side of it, which is, where is your product at in the life cycle? You said you've got an early lead customer. Are you beyond the prototype stage? Are the salespeople actually using this to sell at this point? Can you talk about your life cycle stage a little bit?
Sure. Because when we started this project, I already had found an industry partner who was willing to give us a lot of opportunity to learn and do it. We ended up spending a lot of time focusing on developing something that would work with them. Now, don't get me wrong. When we started, we did a lot of work to experiment and test this concept with actual shoppers and consumers, and test it with the salespeople who were going to use it and so forth. So we did a lot of paper prototypes, we did meetings, we did a variety of things. And then once we had this lead customer really interested and excited about it, we started putting together our prototype. One of the challenges that anybody who's in the B2B space will recognize is that lead customers who have an operating business are challenging to work with when you're in a startup mode, because they require a certain level of quality and a certain feature set. Their minimum viable product is more than you really want to do at that point.
Right.
So we took a bit of a risk, and we swung for the fences with our first prototype. And maybe predictably, hindsight says that we missed, we struck out. And our first rollout with them, we had tried to focus on delivering a feature set that was, kind of a compromise between what we wanted to deliver and what they wanted to deliver. And it ended up not being that effective for use. So we put it out, we rolled it out. Technology worked fine. It was scoped, what we delivered, what we promised we would, but the business didn't use it as we expected it would. So we had to take a step back, reorganize ourselves, revamp what our minimum viable product was. So all good learning, but unfortunately it takes time. And with two people and you're developing, for a lead customer, it does take a lot of time out of the whole project. So what we're at right now is we're in the stages of we've revamped for kind of our lead customer release 2.0, which we're doing in January. And this release will be much more interesting because we're promoting the video conferencing service on their website, and they're going to be, launching it to their consumers, and their salespeople are going to be actually taking these calls in real time. And we're really going to be able to figure out how effective this tool is going to be. We also have a challenge in that we're a new market product, in that we're not just a faster, cheaper, lighter version of an existing product. We're something that it's really hard to go out and find out, what is the ROI for our product, because nobody's doing it. So that's what we've really been focusing on, is trying to get some ROI from an initial customer, so that we can take that ROI and we can leverage that with other similar types of customers.
Yeah. It sounds like a category thing. At least, I think about that. You're defining a new category of product, so there's no ROI worksheet that you can pull out of the desk, right?
Exactly, and that's been very, very challenging for us. So we've relied a lot on this lead customer. If I could go back and do it again, I probably would have. If I could have, I would have slimmed down the requirements even more. I thought they were pretty slim. I would have taken them down even more. Tried to find a way to limit our initial rollout to, if not at least less features, but even to less consumers of this customer, right?
Yep.
So that we could our specs got significantly shorter. I would do that, and instead focus on going out and talking to more retailers in the space. So we did go out and talk to retailers, but we didn't do nearly enough of what we should have, because we believed we had kind of the insight that another startup might not have, because we had this great lead customer who did get us in to talk to people, but really we should have done a lot more. And especially considering we want to build a sustainable business here.
Right.
Also getting outside of the tradition of the industries that we originally focused on, and starting to talk to people in adjacent industries where we might eventually expand to, would have been good to get that reading a lot earlier as well. So we're in the process of backfilling for those areas too.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it couldn't have gone that poorly, because it sounds like you're still working with the same lead customer, so it couldn't have gone that badly. So that's good, right?
Yeah, we had some initial success. We had a couple. I was there one weekend, and they had a couple video calls. They had 2 video calls kind of within the same day. It was a total of 30 minutes of chatting between 2 calls, so 15 minutes each. And in that 15 minutes, they managed to convert over $2,500 worth of sales.
Wow.
In 30 minutes of combined chat. And these are customers that hadn't come into the store and didn't want to come into the store once they knew this was available. So, so far we're batting 1,000, but of course, we need a much larger sample size.
Yeah. So when you say convert, like do they're actually, I don't know, taking a credit card or basically committing to the purchase?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Sight unseen without coming into the store.
Yeah, excellent. So let me ask you, I think we're going to wrap up pretty soon here. We're coming up on time, Eli. But let me ask as a final question. I know one of my friends, and I can't remember if you know him or not, Alan Armstrong. He has this phrase that I really like called "nail it before you scale it," and I think it's appropriate here. Like what evidence are you going to be looking for from the market? Might be this early customer, might be other additional customers, or maybe something in the Steve Blank methodology or something. How will you know when you've got the mix right in terms of the number of features? Because as you say, you can have sometimes too many features, and then the user just gets confused. Like, what's your sense in terms of how you will know when you've got the product mix right, and then turn your focus into scaling the operation?
Yeah, it's a great question. Our initial strategy is really around what our targets are right now, is to get 5 retailers on board using this daily.
Okay.
So we believe before, you're absolutely right. You got to nail it before you scale it. In Steve Blank and Bob Dorf's, they talk about repeatability and scalability, and all those things have to happen only after you've proven you have something that the customers want, and that they want it in a reliable way, right? So we want to get 5 customers who are using this regularly. Before we get those 5 customers, we're going to have to talk to a ton of people. We're going to have to do a lot of sales calls. We're going to have to do a lot of demos, and we'll probably have to do, whatever we can to recently get these 5 customers. And then I think at that point, you've gotten at least a few wins under your belt that you can look back and go, okay, the direction we're going is right. Let's keep going this direction. Or 4 out of those 5 customers really have taken us down a slightly different path. And those changes can happen in any kind of area of your business, from your feature set to your pricing model to your sales model to any aspect of your business model can be affected by those early customers. And all those things kind of have to be known by you in a repeatable way before you can do any sort of scaling. So that's, even after 5, we got to get a heck of a lot further from that before we scale, like what you would traditionally know as scaling. So for us, our goals are a little more modest. Get 5, figure it out. If we're doing good after 5, continue down that path. If not, adjust and keep going.
Good. So let's kind of pause the discussion there. But I want to ask you, I think you're okay with the idea of us checking in with you, let's say quarterly. So let's play a little game here, where if we project the store home business 3 months out, where do you want the business to be? And then when we check back in 3 months, we can see how good your prognostication was. Does that sound like fun?
Yeah, that sounds like fun. It's good. So let's see. So we're being true to the real startup methodologies here, focusing on understanding the marketplace first and foremost. I think what we want to do is we want to be able to say that we've had that in those couple months, at least 25 great conversations with real with people from the target industry we're focused on, which is appliances, or other types of industries that are adjacent, like maybe automotive or furniture and so forth. So really good 25 solid conversations that has given us great information. So that's a bit of a conservative estimate, but I think that's safe. From a more pragmatic aspect, definitely want to be live with this initial customer, getting some real data and real feedback from how effective the product is, so we can develop that understanding of ROI better. And I think those 2 things are going to be our major focus now.
Okay, yeah. Good. Well, listen, thanks, Eli. We'll definitely schedule you to check in another 3 months. But if our listeners want to learn more about your adventure here, the company Store Home, reach out and contact yourself. What contact information are you comfortable sharing with us?
Sure. First of all, the company website is www.storehome.co.
Okay.
So you can check us out there. If you want to contact me directly, just eli@storehome.co.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
That's nice and simple. And I was talking one of my previous episodes with Darina Kulia. I was saying how the .co thing seems to be the new cool. But
got a bit of traction, especially from 500 startups and some of those kind of marquee brands in Silicon Valley for it. It is what it is. There's so many top level domains being released now.
Yeah.
That in 5 years, it's not going to matter. Google does all your searching for you anyways. Domain names are kind of second place now.
Yeah. Well, listen, Eli, I'd like to thank you for coming on, and we'll get something scheduled for next quarter, and best of luck getting that early customer satisfied and getting those 25 conversations. So thank you for coming on.
Hey, thanks so much, Alan. Have a great night.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Today's podcast was brought to you by Eigenworks. Eigenworks specializes in win-loss analysis and customer development as a service. Get candid feedback to improve your sales approach, uncover competitive intelligence, and help you pivot as needed. Thank you for listening to this episode of Ready Product Radio, part of the Ready PDM network. This is when most podcasters ask you to leave a review on iTunes if you like the show. My only request is if you found the show entertaining, inspiring, or informative, please share it with a colleague or friend who may feel the same way. Also, note that the views expressed in this episode do not necessarily reflect my views or the views of the Ready PDM network. If you want yourself or your product to be ready, then keep your eyes on your markets, your ears to your customers, your mind on their experiences, both good and bad, and finally keep your hearts on your products. Until next time, thank you for listening. You can contact us on Twitter at Ready Product Radio. That's RDYPRODUCTRADIO. And on the web at www.readyproductradio.com.
Jane, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.